And they said I'd never discuss this ever again, but boy were they wrong. Those of you who've been around Media Memento since the very beginning might know what this is. But for those of you who don't, well, let me explain. 2006 was a bad year for the Fox network because they tried 7 different shows and each one ended up being a giant failure, but each one in their own different ways. With the exception of one show, they all lasted 1 season and then were never heard from again. And even the one that wasn't cut short still didn't have an easy life. Unbelievable! I came across this set of Fox screener DVDs that I knew I had to use for Media Mementos, and sure enough, I did. I went through the first 4 of these 7 failures. I ended up stopping for 2 reasons. 1, copyright was starting to become a very difficult thing to fight, and 2, no one was really watching the videos. As someone who was just starting out and was really focused on growth, I felt that it wasn't really worth my time to keep continuing this mini-series when barely 100 people would watch. Hey man! But here we are, coming back to review all of those shows in one full video. At long last, this mini-series is finally going to be done. Now let's take a look at the 7 2006 Fox failures. There's not exactly an order that I place these shows in, but I've tried to place the more interesting ones at the end. That way, I can keep you watching the video. That way, we can build up to a climactic end. And trust me, this ending, oh boy. Some of Fox's greatest incompetence ever. Number 1, Happy Hour. I hadn't seen this show since I initially reviewed it, and at the time, I said it was absolutely horrible, but now, I've grown to appreciate the show a lot more, and now I consider it one of my favorites.
Because I'm a lady?
Nah, just kidding, it's still awful. In fact, it's actually the worst of this entire lot. I can tolerate the others at worst, but this is something else.
That show sucks!
Oh. It's like if some inexperienced college freshman decided to write an episode of Friends, but completely missed the point on what made Friends good.
Some farmers want a combine, some want a harvester. Only thing they could agree on is they all want a cup holder.
What the hell was that?
It's about this loser who gets dumped by his girlfriend, who just so happens to be Caitlin from 16. No, really, same actress. And then he moves in with this wild playboy, who every afternoon turns his kitchen into a bar where he and the loser talk about their problems and adventures and honestly not much else because the show didn't last very long. It had the second shortest run of this entire lot. Out of the 13 episodes of Happy Hour, only 4 made it to air. Yeah, it was that bad. The reviews were poor and the ratings were even worse. They didn't even start off very good, but they consistently had a 30% decline with each week. Fox decided to cut it short after 4 episodes, originally placing it on hiatus after the baseball finals, but then when the finals were over, Happy Hour was nowhere in sight. It was never heard from again. It got to the point where all episodes except the pilot have become lost media, and the only reason that the pilot isn't lost media is because, well, I just so happened to find it on those screener DVDs and posted it online. You want the cherry on top of this whole crap sundae? Fox cared so little about Happy Hour that even though they canceled it in November of 2006, they waited until May of 2007 to let anyone know. Guess it slipped their mind or something. After seeing the show though, can't really say I blame them. Number 2, Standoff. This is the show that I have the least amount of information on, as most reports of what happened behind the scenes seem to have been lost to time. But here's what we were able to figure out. In this action-packed cop drama, there was a big turnout for the premiere, but then immediately after, the audience was cut in half.
Just get the cameras here!
Yeah, not like Happy Hour where it was just a 30% decline. No, this is exactly half. It was then when alarm bells started going off everywhere, except at Fox. They didn't really seem to consider this that much of a problem, considering that they added an additional 6 episodes to the 10 that were already made. Wouldn't you know it, this turned out to be a bad idea as ratings continued to plummet, and Standoff became one of the least successful shows of the year. Like Happy Hour, it was put on hiatus around the baseball finals, and it never came back. Although this time, Fox continued to say that it would come back eventually, but it just never did. The release date kept getting pushed back further and further until eventually everyone gave up. That's kind of strange though, isn't it? This cop show was not doing well at all, and Fox decided to double down on their commitment to it and give it more chances than it deserved. Why do you think they did that? As for me, I have an idea, but I'm going to wait until the end to share it. Trust me, it'll make a lot more sense when you see what these other 5 shows are. Speaking of which, number 3, Vanished. This is an action drama show created by CSI creator John Berman. And at first, things were going really well for Vanished. Vanished looked like it was going to be the only show of the 2006 season that was going to be a hit. Having 24's old time slot didn't hurt, and it got some okay reviews. Some considered it a breath of fresh air and a bold step forward, while others considered it, which personally I'm in the latter camp. It's okay at best. But the former at the time seemed to outweigh the latter, so Fox decided to keep going with the series. The ratings weren't all that stellar, but it had a passionate group of supporters that were really getting invested in the story. What is the story? Well, it's about the wife of a US senator who gets kidnapped by a group of Freemasons, and now the FBI has to track her down and save her before it's too late. A little generic, sure, but with the right writing, it could turn out to be something special. Again, I don't think that it ended up being that, but a lot of people at the time sure did, so good for them. Fox could tell that with a little bit more work and polish, this could be something big. So they put a ton of extra effort into promoting the show, and for a while, it seemed to work. The ratings were starting to go up. And then everything came tumbling down. A little show called Heroes premiered around the mid-season point, and lo and behold, it siphoned off Vanished's viewership, and the show began to tank. Not helping was that around this time, Gail Harold, who was the main character in this show, decided to leave the show in favor of a role on Desperate Housewives. Fox decided to kill his character off, hoping that this would be a conversation starter to renew interest in the show. But all it ended up doing was ticking off the few fans that remained, and then Vanished became one of the biggest failures in Fox history. There were 4 episodes of Vanished left to air, but they never made it to Fox. Instead, they were live streamed on MySpace of all places, but it never regained the momentum that it used to have early on, and I don't think it ever will. Since the show came out, there have been a bunch of better shows with similar plots and themes, meaning that Vanished won't be coming back into the limelight anytime soon. And really, that's okay. There's a lot worse things that could happen to a show, such as... Number 4, Justice. The show didn't do very well right from the beginning, with a lot of people saying that it was basically like Law & Order written by people that don't know what they're doing, but at least it looked pretty. And yeah, I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I don't know. They do their own thing enough to not be a ripoff of Law & Order, but more so an inspiration, I'd say. Anyways, back to the story. This debuted to poor ratings right away, so it was moved to a different time slot right alongside the hit show Prison Break, hoping that, since this show came on right after, the audience that watched Prison Break would stick around to watch Justice. They did not. In fact, the ratings seemed to get even worse. The series was put on hiatus for 2 days and then was moved to Vanished's old time slot because around this time, Vanished was... dead. But you know what that means, right? Just like Vanished, this show that was primarily aimed at the young demographic was put up against the exact show that killed Vanished in the first place, Heroes. Come on, Fox! It already killed one of the shows that you really wanted to see do well, and you're letting it happen again? You guys really should have known that if anything was gonna go up against Heroes and try to draw the same demographic, it was gonna lose. Especially a show that was struggling up until this point. 14 episodes were ordered, 1 was unproduced, 1 was unaired, and then the rest were just forgotten about as soon as they aired. There were some initial talks to give it either a second season or an extended first season, but the December 11th deadline came and went and nothing happened, which meant that the show was not going to get another shot. I guess Fox finally decided to learn their lesson and admit that Justice was just never gonna catch on. It's really weird though, isn't it? Fox was trying to do everything they could to bail certain failures out while letting others flounder and die. Have any of you noticed the common theme between the shows they tried to save and the shows they let suffer? There is one, trust me. And if you guess it right, you get the prize. I don't know what the prize is, so get back to me on that, okay? Number 5, The Wedding Album. Out of every show in the 2006 lineup, this one was the shortest lived. It lasted for one episode and then disappeared. That's right, folks. We got ourselves a dropped pilot, and one with a very wild history. One that I didn't even really cover fully in the original video that I did. Now seems like a good time to make up for it. The Wedding Album was greenlit to be a mid-season replacement. Let's face it, with 2006 being as rough of a year as it was for Fox, they kinda needed some, and they decided to let the Wedding Album come to life because they were very excited about the prospects of the show. The Wedding Album had what they thought were likable characters and a gripping romance story, but then when they saw the pilot, they were really disappointed. It wasn't what they wanted at all. Granted, it was still the same script about a British wedding photographer falling in love with his assistant, but Fox didn't see it working. And real quick, if I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in, I'd say it's because it's as boring as dirt. Still having high hopes for what this series could be, they ordered the pilot to be reshot with a new cast, and they hated that too, only airing the pilot once, and then replacing it with another wedding-themed show, The Wedding Bells, which also didn't last very long, but at least it got more than one episode. The original video that I did on The Wedding Album was talking about how Fox screwed it over, but after thinking about it more, I'm actually more inclined to side with Fox. Why exactly do I side with them? Well, stay tuned. It'll all make sense shortly. Now these last two. Wow, these are the 2 worst failures of the entire lineup, and that's purely because of Fox. Are you ready for this? Number 6, The Winner. This show was made by Seth MacFarlane and Ricky Blitt. Seth MacFarlane, of course, is the creator of The Family Guy, American Dad, and Non-Applicable. And Ricky Blitt is one of Family Guy's most successful writers. Given that I'm not super big on Family Guy, I expected to hate this show, but lo and behold, it was easily my favorite of the lot. It's really good.
I am so sorry to hear that, Allison.
It's about this 40-something loser man-child who still lives with his parents. He's made nothing of his life and he doesn't have any future plans.
What's new, dear?
Not too much.
Until the girl that he had a crush on at school moves back to town, so now he's gotta make something of himself to win her over. But the things that he's doing aren't exactly impressive. For instance, he thinks that getting a job will impress her, but he gets a job at this low-end video store and thinks it's a big deal.
Congratulations, sweetie, you got the job.
The strength of the show comes not exactly from the writing, but the actor's delivery. If it was a different cast, I don't know if it'd land quite as hard. Glenn, our main character, is so lovable and dorky, but he's also really funny.
Oh, were you just like doing surgery or something?
Just goes to show that when Seth MacFarlane and crew have some boundaries, they can make some legitimately good characters instead of Peter Griffin. With all these good things I'm saying about the show, you'd expect it to be a pretty big hit, right?
Wrong!
Fox saw to it that this show was a giant failure. To understand what happened, let's go back to the very beginning. The beginning being 2002. Family Guy was just cancelled and it was time for the crew to move on to other things. Ricky Blitt originally pitched this show to Fox around this time, but the pilot had a completely different cast. They said no, which gave Blitt enough time to produce the 40-year-old virgin. That film's success, combined with the fact that Family Guy had recently been revived,
You'd better watch it!
gave Fox all the motivation they needed to greenlight the show. Seth MacFarlane was now on board around this time, and they shot a brand new pilot. The show was picked up, and then that's where the problem started, right from the beginning. Despite the show's promise, Fox decided to sit on the completed episodes until 2007. Keep in mind, this was supposed to be a 2006 show, but they held on to it until they needed, yet again, another mid-season pickup to replace one of their failures. This show wouldn't end up being any better, but that's because Fox crippled it right from the start.
Okie dokie.
Not only was it heavily delayed, but there was barely any promotion for the new series, which meant that no one really knew it was on. It also had the worst time slots you can give to any show. Later at night on Sunday. The Winner was being aired at 8:30 and 9:30 on a Sunday night when everyone was getting ready for school or work. I'll bet you're thinking, wait a minute, it aired at 8:30 and 9:30? Did they run the episode twice in one night? Nope. They ran 2 episodes each night, which is exactly what a network does when they try to get rid of a show as quickly as possible. Surprise of all surprises, all of this meant that The Winner didn't win anything. It failed, and it disappeared with, again, like Happy Hour, most episodes becoming lost media, which is a real shame. Unlike Happy Hour, this was a solid show that really could have been something big if Fox gave it a shot. And none of this was accidental. This was 100% sabotage. The biggest telltale sign, well, aside from the obvious lack of advertisement, is that, yeah, they aired 2 episodes in one night, but they didn't even do it back to back. It was The Winner, another show, and then The Winner again. Who does that? And furthermore, who does that and expects it to work? No one's quite sure why The Winner was sabotaged. There were a lot of different theories out there, like Fox wanting to make this show as a token effort to appease McFarlane and Blitt, but really wanted them to come back to Family Guy. Or another theory that's gonna make a lot more sense when you see what the next show is. Here we go, folks. The last show of this lineup is the one with the craziest story. I do not understand why Fox did this. I've been thinking about it for a while, and it's never made sense. There's no use beating around the bush. Time to talk about number 7, Till Death. This was the only show of the 2006 failure line that lasted more than 1 season, and honestly, it didn't really deserve it. It's a fine show and all, has some decent laughs and some okay characters, but it's far from spectacular. What's the show about? I don't know. Throughout all the episodes I've seen, I've never been able to get a firm grasp as to what the show's supposed to be about, but to be fair, there's a very good reason for it. First of all, this show was greenlit by Fox purely because they wanted to save some money on some of their shows. They got the licensing costs of this show dirt cheap, and the production cost was even lower. So they decided to keep Till Death on in order to get their goal of a syndicated series. Basically, their whole plan was get the show for pennies so that they could send it out to other networks and get mad money. It didn't work. It had terrible ratings, even for a comedy, but Fox wouldn't give up. They renewed it for 4 seasons, changing its time slot constantly in hopes of it finding an audience, and running a ton of ads for this to try and entice people to give the show a chance. But that's not all. The show kept changing the premise with each passing season. At first, it was about the main 2 characters being a dysfunctional couple. And then season 2 dropped a lot of their side characters and replaced them with new ones, and then had a greater focus on the 2 main characters' relationship. The 3rd season was about the husband of the family having a bromance with one of his buds, and then the 4th season was basically Everybody Loves Raymond / Married with Children, but not funny.
This is absolutely crazy.
I know, because you're making everything screwy.
Just like all the scheduling changes and constant ads, this was a desperate and ill-conceived attempt to give Till Death a fan base. It became a running joke amongst TV columnists that Till Death, funny enough, just wouldn't die. No one was watching it, no one was liking it, but Fox kept renewing it out of habit. Sound familiar? It is worth noting that after season 3, Fox was originally gonna cancel the show, but then at the last minute, they decided to renew the show, which baffled everyone that heard the news. It was later revealed that Fox only did this because this would give them enough episodes to make a syndicated package, which honestly doesn't surprise me at this point, given their track record of the 2006 season. Only by this point it was 2010, but some things never change, I guess. With that being said, I'm sure Fox would have continued to renew Till Death until the actors died, but season 4 proved that that would have been a terrible idea. One so terrible that not even Fox could ignore it. Till Death started off with a 7.1 in the Nielsen ratings, which for back then was not good at all. But at the end of season 4, it had a 2.4. Yikes. Brad Garrett, the male lead of the show, had this to say: "The other night we got a 0.8. Once your mom stops watching, you're a 0.4. The network said, what do you suggest? I said, if you give me 1 more month, I can take you to a 0. And there was dead silence. He went on to say, After year 2, when you're getting beaten by Telemundo, it's time to go home. I mean, even the show my housekeeper watches was beating the show that was paying her salary. Fox did eventually get their syndication wishes granted, but it wasn't in the way they wanted. TV Land, WGN, and CW all picked up the show in syndicated reruns, but only around 3 in the morning. Guess the viewers got the last laugh in the end, huh? Those were the Fox 2006 failures. What a wild ride. A mix of network incompetence, and network incompetence, all making one of the worst years for this television giant. I posed this question earlier, and now I'm gonna do it again. Do any of you notice a pattern with the shows that they tried to save and the shows that they let die? In case you haven't picked up on it yet, they only tried to save the shows that were marketable. Till Death may have been a failure, but if it ended up being syndicated, Fox could make their money back and then some. And then there are their drama shows, Standoff, Vanished, and Justice. All of these could have been something with cult followings that could have been as big as CSI or NYPD Blue. At least in theory, because that would have required these shows to have been good. And what are the shows that they let die? Happy Hour? A really bad, highly hated bomb of a comedy show that was making an embarrassment out of the network? Drop it immediately. Let it die. The Winner? A weird offbeat sitcom that's made by the creator of Family Guy? One of their biggest shows that he needed to devote more attention to? Can't let that succeed. That's not gonna fit our demographic. The failure of these shows, yes, was partially because most of them lacked quality, but also because Fox was thinking too hard about building a brand and not actually thinking about what the audience is gonna wanna see. If The Winner was given a lot more attention, it could have been a big hit. If they'd taken the time that Happy Hour was on hiatus and retooled it a bit and maybe hired some new writers, it might have ended up being halfway decent. But there was no way you could save something like Justice when it was basically a style over substance courtroom drama. Or in the case of Vanished, you had something good here, but then when it started to struggle, you only ended up making it worse. This is actually why I'm okay with what Fox did to the Wedding Album. Despite the fact that they clearly greenlit the show to be some kind of perpetual ratings trap that would get the audience to tune in again and again for this will they, won't they drama fest, they knew when enough was enough. After the disastrous year they've had with trying to prop up failure after failure with none of them turning a profit, they didn't let history repeat itself and decided to shut the Wedding Album down when it was clear that it wasn't going to work. Once again, I don't think that this thing would have been a good show. The pilot was already super uninteresting, generic, bland, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I get it, the pilot is your testing ground and something that's just supposed to lay the framework while not necessarily reflecting the future quality, but there's only so much you can improve on it, you know? It proves once and for all that this was not going to be the mega hit that Fox wanted, so good on them for cutting their losses while they could. Overall, this season was a mix of incompetence, greed, and plain old poor quality. Fox has had some rough years since, but none of them have been as bad as this, where there have been 7 failures, all unique in the ways that they failed, and none of them leaving a significant impact. That is every network's worst nightmare, and for Fox, it came true. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? Have you seen any of these shows before? If so, what do you think of them? And which story did you find to be the most entertaining or the craziest? Comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon people, Masters of Fate, Manny Paredes, Kev, Leaf Storm, and Ryan Williams. And let's not forget our executive producers, Azarius, Unkale, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, Who Else But Zane, YouTube Milkwad, Albert Robinson, I Am Fove, and Aaron Vasquez. If you would like to be just like these wonderful people and have your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? It doesn't cost a lot, and there's a fancy little link in the description for you to click on. Thanks for watching, friends. See you guys next time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go watch the pilot of The Winner again because that's all I have of the show, and that's all I can really do to get my winner fix. Such is life. Who every afternoon... But I'm going to wait... But I'm going to wait till the end to share. Nope.